Looks like this second trilogy will only be a duology, but it's still a sequel, and sequels are always better than the original, right? So, let's wrap things up. Everybody knows by now that Fox News Channel may as well rename itself Trump News Channel, because Fox News has been, with a few exceptions, all in for Donald Trump, as the rest of the media has been all in for the Democrats for decades now. Yes, corrupt tribalism, which used to be limited to the Democrat Party, is now bipartisan, and there's pretty much no media outlet that has integrity anymore. And so it becomes a case of, well, I don't like your media, they're fake news. No, I don't like your media, they're fake news. And the bottom line is, for all intents and purposes, they're all fake news. It's just a question of which direction. Now, having said all that, I despise the term fake news, because that implies, oh, it's all made up, it's all fabricated, it's all phony baloney, plastic banana, good time, rock and roll. And that's not true. It can't all be made up. You want made up? Try InfoWars. That's made up. That is batshit crazy conspiracy nonsense. You know, I hate the term mainstream media as well, because they really aren't. They're partisan media. That would be a much better way to put it. Or I guess now it's the bipartisan partisan media, because a lot, talk radio and Fox News Channel and all the, what used to be the conservative bastions of journalistic integrity against the liberal media are now just as corrupt and biased and cheerleaders, putting on the red jerseys versus the blue jerseys, as the liberal media has been for all these many decades. They have become what they condemned. They have become the enemy. And really, there isn't any difference between the two anymore. But biased media is not fake news. It's not that what the media throws out there it doesn't exist. It's not like it's made up. It's just that they put out what they want to put out. They emphasize what is consistent with their agenda. That's all. I mean, and if you go back far enough in American history, you go back to the 19th century, and every big town had a Republican newspaper and a Democrat newspaper. I mean, the biases were right out in the open. It wasn't considered that big a deal. And then the notion that media is objective, call it right down the middle, arose in the 20th century, even though that was phony, baloney, plastic, banana, good time, rock and roll as well. The media pretends, for years, for decades, they pretended to be objective. This is Walter Cronkite, CBS News. Good night. If you've lost Walter Cronkite, you've lost middle America. And of course they weren't. They were liberal. They were biased. But back in those days, they were kind of the palace guard. They were this is just the way of things. This is just normal. And of course, conservatism was aberrant and weird and extreme and radical. And of course, that's back when William F. Buckley was blazing the trail for mainstreaming conservatism. And of course, under the rise of Trump mania, all of Mr. Buckley's efforts have been flushed down the waste extractor. And that, of course, is how we end up where we are today. You know, with the liberal media going from the keepers of the way things are to being partisan, which they've always been. It's just when Barack Obama came along, they just stopped trying to hide it. And the problem with the conservative media now is that they do the same thing for Donald Trump. You know, they don't report the truth. They don't report the news. They report whatever helps Trump, and they don't report whatever doesn't help Trump. So really, if you want to know the lowdown on a given party or a given politician, you got to listen to the other media, the opposition's media, to get an idea of what's really going on. And yeah, they're biased too, but you know, they have an incentive to report items that the politician on the other side in question wouldn't want to get out there. I mean, it's a very fine line to walk. You gotta do your homework, which of course nobody wants to have to think anymore. And thinking is a lost art in American culture in 2017, particularly American political culture. So with all that as a backdrop, with all that as context, we start with a post at Red State, May 17th, headline: Fox News confirms existence of the Comey memo. Yeah, Fox News, Trump News, confirms the existence of the Comey memo. You know, I post things like this on social media, and I add a comment or a caption. Oh well, here's cognitive dissonance for Trumpers. Their own cable news channel confirms the existence of the Comey memo. How now, brown cow? Of course, they just attack the messenger because they're as much Alinsky-ists as Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama ever were. Joe Cunningham was the author of this post at redstate.com. Now, the now infamous Comey memo, which states Donald Trump asked James Comey to stop investigating Mike Flynn, has been acknowledged by multiple news outlets since the New York Times disclosed it in a story the previous night. Now, Fox News joins the list of networks that seem to be confirming the memo's existence. Here is the tweet from Fox News. Fox News now independently confirms existence of the Comey memo in which Trump asked him to end the Flynn investigation. Now, there seems to be little doubt now that the memo exists. The contents of the memo and the truth of the situation is recalling, however, still seem to be in question to some, i.e., Trump defenders. What exactly did Trump say to Comey? And not just what he said, but how did he say it? You know, I mean, it could be a nudge, nudge, wink, wink kind of thing. He might have been kidding, or he might have been kidding, but really was serious. But he wanted Comey maybe to believe that he was kidding. Yeah, although that's a bit of, even that is a level of Machiavellianism of which I don't think Trump has either the mental discipline or the intelligence to pull off. Well, we don't seem to know what Trump said to Comey as far as the context of the conversation. See, that's what I was getting at. But it is hard to deny that if the President of the United States asks you something or makes a request, there is a certain level of implied political pressure there. You know, it's like I say, don't throw rocks at a guy with a machine gun, and don't shoot off your mouth at a guy who takes copious notes. Now, as we have been going through this 5-part series on Donald Trump's worst fortnight ever so far. And his pressuring of James Comey is demanding that Comey kneel before Trump and swear personal loyalty like Trump was some kind of emperor or something. And pressuring Comey to end the Michael Flynn investigation, and pressuring Comey to end the investigation into Russiagate, and pressuring him to do this and pressuring him to do that, and getting pissed and more pissed when Comey refused to comply, because of course Comey couldn't comply. It's, you know, his role requires him to maintain a level of professional and institutional independence. And so you may have been wondering, well, if all this was going on and Comey was getting all these inappropriate requests from the President of the United States, then why didn't he quit a long time ago? I mean, why didn't he see the handwriting on the wall back in the transition? Why did Trump need to ease him out? Why didn't he just? I mean, we would think after having to wade through all that crap last year with the Hillary Clinton email-gate scandal and the Trump-Russia deal and all these things, and if trying to keep out of the presidential election and winding up doing a cannonball into the middle of it, at least twice, why didn't he just quit on his own? Why didn't he just, I've had enough of this. Mr. President, you need a fresh start. You need a clean slate. I'm going to bow out. There's plenty of things I could do, blah, 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 and go on, part company amicably and spare the country all this drama. Well, there are reasons why that was not a good idea. And Josh Barrow brings them to our attention at Business Insider. Here's why Comey couldn't just quit in February. Congressman Peter King, among others, has raised the question of how James Comey could have ethically kept quiet if, as reportedly alleged in one of his memos, Donald Trump took him aside in February and asked the then director of the FBI to end the Bureau's investigation into Michael Flynn. Didn't Comey have an obligation at the time to go public with his concerns that the president was obstructing justice? Even an obligation to resign in protest? On the face of it, it's a perfectly legitimate question. But consider what would have happened if he had done so. Indeed, consider a defense we are hearing of the president's comments from February. Here's a couple of tweets, one from Mariana Sotomayor, NBC News. A senior White House official tells Peter Alexander that POTUS wasn't telling Comey to end Flynn investigation and suggests this is the way he speaks. And then there's John Bresnahan of Politico. Heard this last night from some Republicans on the Hill in Congress. Trump was just spouting off, wasn't serious attempt at obstruction. Yeah, that sounds softly weak as a defense. Oh, well, that's just Trump being Trump. He didn't mean it. But that doesn't deny that he said it, does it? And which is what makes it really? Really? Can't you do better than that? Well, of course, today the retort is obvious. If Trump wasn't making a serious effort to obstruct justice, if he was just engaged in Oval Office talk or whatever, then why the hell did this end with him firing the FBI director? That is kind of the other shoe that's, the size of a ski boot. Thunk. But if Comey had gone public in February, The defense from Republicans would have been that Trump just talks like that, and he wasn't trying to obstruct justice, and you shouldn't take him so literally. You should take him seriously, but not literally. Or is it literally but not seriously? I can't even... I don't remember. Doesn't really matter, does it? The expression is moronic. And without Trump having taken a concrete step to obstruct justice, such as firing the FBI director, that defense would have worked. In other words, maybe the thinking in Comey's mind was, no, I'm going to make him fire me. Because then that'll settle the question once and for all of whether he's really serious about these supposed, well, it's just Trump being Trump. That's just the way he talks. He was just kidding. He's just making small talk. Just guy locker room talk, etc. Like he didn't really grab all those pussies, for example. You know, Comey wanted to make Trump fire him. Just to establish, okay, you want to know whether he was really serious about trying to pressure me to end the Flynn investigation? I'll make him fire me. If he doesn't fire me, then maybe he got a point. But that, of course, is what Trump did. See, if Comey had resigned or had given the president political license to fire him by breaking publicly with him on a high-profile matter, then Trump would have been able to replace him with a loyal supporter, a crony, a stooge, a flunky, who could have sought to kill the Flynn investigation more quietly. I mean, if you work for a private firm and your boss asks you to do something unethical, you are likely to have an ethical obligation to quit. But Comey worked for the American people, and he seems to have understood that his ethical obligation was to stay in place, refuse the unethical request, and keep a paper trail. See what I mean about the wisdom of not throwing rocks at a guy with a machine gun? This is why I have absolutely no sympathy for Trump supporters when it comes to the deep state. And they act like this is only Republican president, fake or otherwise, who's ever had to deal with the federal bureaucracy. The truth is, every Republican president of the modern era has had to deal with this problem. Eisenhower did, Nixon did, Ford did, Reagan did, Bush 41 did, Bush 43 did. They all did. It is part of the job description of every Republican president, even a fake one like Donald Trump. They have to deal with the federal bureaucracy. And the federal bureaucracy, the permanent bureaucracy, is always going to be liberal. It always has been, it always will be. And yet Trumpers act like it's never happened before, and it's unique unto Donald Trump, and they're out to get Donald Trump, and it's just not fair. Oh, shut up. And if Trump was really serious about draining the swamp, you'd think that he would be trying to get as many of his people appointed and into key positions in his administration as possible. And of course, that's not the case. Trump is the laziest, most slothful POTUS in terms of staffing his administration ever. Case in point, Justice Department. How many Trump appointees are there in the Justice Department? And remember, we're talking about several tens of thousands of employees. So how many Trump employees are in the Justice Department? One. That's it. Attorney General Jeff Sessions. That's it. Oh, maybe Rod Rosenstein. He was Deputy Attorney General. So let's say that. Well, two. Out of how many? 10,000, 15,000, 20,000? I'd have to look it up. And it's that way throughout the entire executive branch. I mean, it's the legacy of every Republican president that they have to deal with the federal bureaucracy. You can call it the deep state, like it's some sort of brand new, novel, super secret conspiracy or something, but it's just the executive branch. It's just the federal bureaucracy. That's how they are. That's how they're always going to be. Deal with it. And it seems to me, it's always seemed to me that if you wanted somebody who was really going to drain the swamp, don't you think you need somebody who knows how the swamp works? Somebody who knows what they're doing, who understands how Washington, D.C. works. I would think if you wanted to drain the swamp, the last thing you would do is get someone nominated and get someone elected who doesn't know crap about Washington, D.C. The last thing you need is an outsider. The last thing you need is a neophyte, a rookie, a total naif, because the deep state will have him for lunch. And so, you know, when you look at this Comey firing, the Comey memo and all this, this was a perfect example of Donald Trump, somebody who doesn't know what he's doing, going up against somebody who does know how Washington, D.C. works. And Comey, to the degree that Comey set Trump up, Trump was ripe for the picking, ladies and gentlemen. That doesn't require supporting Trump or opposing Trump. That's just to understand, that's just the way it is. If you want Trump to succeed, he's got to stop being Trump. And that's not possible. But there is something else that I wouldn't have thought possible. I remember after the 2006 midterms, when the Democrats took control of both houses of Congress, and Nancy Pelosi got the big gavel, crazy Nancy. And I said at the time, the first order of business in that Congress is going to be the double impeachment of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney. And then it didn't happen. I was surprised, frankly. Of course, I was a lot more tribalist back then as well. And that gets back to a recurring theme of mine, which is that impeachment is a very difficult thing to do. It's not an election by other means. It's not what it was intended for by the Founding Fathers. It was meant for a very unique situation, a crisis situation, where the president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors, whatever he's done, and there is political consensus for trying and removing him from office. There have only been 2 impeachments in American history and no convictions. 0. It's difficult to do. And that's how the Founding Fathers intended it. So, you heard a lot of talk from Democrats since Trump was inaugurated about how, we got to impeach President Trump. Impeach, 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 impeach. Everything he does. He gets up on the wrong side of the bed. Oh, that's a high crime and misdemeanor. Impeach him! And you know for a fact that if the Democrats retake, even if they just retake the House of Representatives in next year's midterm elections, that their first order of business, and I don't really have any doubt about this at all, their first order of business is going to be impeaching Trump. You know that that's what they're going to do. And Trump will make it, he's already made it way easier for them to pursue that. Look where his approval numbers are. They're just under 40% in the Real Clear Politics average. But that's what made this so surprising. Headline, Red State. Nancy Pelosi speaks out on Trump impeachment, and you probably will want to get your ears checked. The Hill had a post on May 17th headlined, "Restive Dems Amplify Calls for Impeachment." Here's the quote. Restive Democrats urging the impeachment of President Trump are amplifying their case Wednesday following last week, following new reports suggesting Trump pressed the FBI to drop a probe into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Representative Maxine Waters, Mad Maxine, spoke out at a closed-door Democrat caucus meeting last Wednesday, underscoring the urgency of removing Trump, whom the Democrats increasingly see as a national security liability. Well, it's not that they give a rat's ass about national security, though. This is the party that nominated Hillary Clinton, so you could, and stuck by Barack Obama for 8 years, so they don't give a rat's ass about national security. This is just partisan tribalism. You put one of ours in the hospital, we put 2 of yours in the morgue. This is West Side Story in politics, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, they're calling it, trying to dress it up as, well, it's because of Trump's a national security liability. And that's just trying to put a legitimate veneer over what is just plain straight out political gang warfare. Also Wednesday morning, Representative Al Green of Texas, who joined the impeachment push earlier in the week, took to the House floor to trumpet that call, characterizing his decision as a position of conscience. Your mileage may vary, Congressman. "This is where I stand. I will not be moved. The president must be impeached." End of quote. But here's something that is very fascinating, and you would never in a million years have imagined that it would come from the lips of this Botox zombie. The one name that is missing from the list of notables is crazy Nancy Pelosi. Continuing the quote from The Hill. House Minority Leader crazy Nancy Pelosi knocked down growing calls from members of her own party to impeach President Trump during a town hall Monday. See, remember, Trump and the Democrats have way more in common than Trump has ever had with the Republicans. So, Democrat hyper hostility to Donald Trump makes no sense in any rational thought process. They could so easily co-opt him. It isn't even funny. And yet, their tribalism has run amok. But here's crazy Nancy knocking down the growing calls from members of her own party to impeach Trump. Pelosi told a CNN town hall that impeachment must be rooted in facts rather than personal opinions about the president. The San Francisco Democrat was asked specifically about Texas Democrat Al Green's calls to impeach Trump over the firing of former FBI Director James Comey. She said the calls are a reflection of what Democrat members are hearing from their constituencies, but said she personally does not subscribe to that notion. I know, right? This is Nancy Pelosi saying this? When did she regain her sanity? It's almost like she's saying, pace yourselves. Let the process play out. Trump has not been given enough rope with which to hang himself. Don't jump the gun. In other words, again, if you were talking about impeachment, you were talking about what are the facts. Not that I don't like him and I don't like his hair, but what are the facts, Pelosi said. What are the facts that you can make a case, or on which you can make a case? What are the rules that he may have violated? If you don't have that case, you are just participating in more hearsay. Stunning, isn't it? We truly are in bizarro world, folks, where Nancy Pelosi is the voice of reason. Pelosi characterized the first months of the Trump regime as sloppy, but said the American people are owed stability. End of quote. Well, smack my ass and call me Sally. I feel like I just did something incredibly bizarre, like quoting the leader of Hezbollah to criticize Donald Trump. It is a strange state of affairs when you find Nancy Pelosi acting like a sane person, but I'll tell you what she's saying between the lines there, and it's not difficult to understand, folks. Pace yourselves. Trump will put himself right where we want him, and in order to impeach Trump, the Democrats are going to have to retake the House. So what she's saying is, we'll get to it. We'll get to it, but first we've got to take the House back. And the way things are going with the ongoing Trump cluster bleep, that's becoming an increasingly likely possibility. Ben Shapiro, the conservative Ronin Nightwing to my conservative Ronin Batman, you might say, agrees with my oft-stated sentiment that impeachment is a last resort. It is not something that you immediately turn to. It's not an election by other means. And sure as Shinola, the Republicans aren't going to impeach Trump because tribalism. No more complicated than that. But he talked about this at the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro that is, as some items with regard to the Comey memo and Comey firing Hypercane. The left has gotten way over its skis on a New York Times report that suggests that Donald Trump told now fired FBI Director James Comey, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Michael Flynn go." And that Comey evidenced such a conversation in a contemporaneous memo. The left is talking, of course, impeachment, which they've been talking about for, how long has it been now? 5 months? 4 months. 4 months. 4 months of it. They've been talking about impeaching early since the day after the election. Okay, well, more than 4 months. But now Democrats are all on the same page for Nancy Pelosi, it appears, singing the same tune. Trump is supposedly responsible for obstruction of justice and therefore should be impeached for attempting to stymie investigations into his associates and connections between campaign team and the Russians. There's one big problem here, though. So far, there's no actual evidence that any such investigations have been slowed, stopped, or impeded. That's kind of a big shoot, too. But here are some thoughts on the scandal du jour, in no particular order. Number one, Trump may have obstructed justice without the intent to do so, because he's an idiot. Assuming for a moment that the Comey memo story is true, and that has yet to be shown, of course, obstruction of justice is on the table. The left is trying to suggest that Comey's firing demonstrates that Trump wanted to obstruct justice, and there's a certain logic to this. Even if Trump thought Flynn was innocent, attempting to kill an investigation, then firing a guy for failing to do so amounts to obstruction. You don't have to actively impede an investigation with intent to let a guilty guy off the hook in order to obstruct justice. Number two, Trump's best excuse is stupidity and carelessness. In other words, he's an idiot. Trump should be able to argue, at least somewhat convincingly, that he wasn't interested in obstructing justice. Probably doesn't even know what it means. The evidence for this? Well, Comey didn't resign. Comey obviously didn't know whether to take Trump seriously or not. And nobody at the FBI has publicly stated in any circumstance that the Trump administration tried to quash any investigation. Trump likely fired Comey because he just didn't like him for a wide variety of reasons, not included to stopping active investigations. Trump may not like the investigation, and he may say so to the FBI director, but this is all basically a bunch of hubbub about loose talk. In other words, Trump made it look like he was obstructing justice, but he, number one, he just was stupid enough to say something like that without realizing that's what he was doing. And by firing Comey, he puts a Democrat in charge of the FBI. So you think that's going to stay on the investigation? Hey, if that was the idea, then Trump is even more incompetent than we already thought he was. Number 3, many Trump supporters won't accept this explanation. Of course they won't. I've seen it. One of the biggest problems for some of those who wish to defend Trump is that they refuse to acknowledge Trump's obvious shortcomings. They are emotionally invested in the notion that Donald Trump is brilliant, just like Obamunists were similarly invested in Barack Obama. But this would suggest maliciousness rather than stupidity behind Trump's conversations with Comey and behind his method of firing Comey. In other words, wouldn't you rather him be seen as an idiot than be seen as a criminal? Some of Trump's most ardent worshipers are going to have to give up the myth of Trump the genius if they want to preserve Trump the president. Can they do this? I seriously doubt it. 4, the media won't accept this explanation. And for the equivalent reason, tribalism. The media, who do believe that Trump is a stupid man, still won't offer the most plausible explanation as a real possibility. It's either obstruction of justice or bust for them, because for them, impeachment is just a redo, a mulligan on the 2016 election. This is too good a political opportunity for them to pass up, even if it means demagoguing the issue beyond the facts available. Number 5, you can't see me. Portraying flyover country as ignorant is actually elitist. It's become a highly irritating trope of political commentary these days to say that people outside the Beltway don't care about this stuff. But why wouldn't they? Do they not have internet? Do they not read newspapers? Why would blue-collar people ignore the news? In fact, we know that Trump voters in flyover country most assuredly do follow the news. They were obviously on top of Hillary's email scandal. But the tacit message here is not that people in blue-collar areas don't care about the Comey saga. It's that those on the right don't want them to care about the Comey saga. And so they use the excuse the audience doesn't care to cover other material instead. Sounds an awful lot like the Monica Lewinsky affair, doesn't it? When the Democrats said, it's just sex, nobody cares about this, everybody does it. Tucker Carlson's viewers would care about Comey-gate if Tucker Carlson cared about Comey-gate. He doesn't, so they don't. It's not the other way around. 6, nobody's ousting Trump under the 25th Amendment. Let me, parenthetically, share with you contents of the 25th Amendment. Amendment 25 to the United States Constitution. Section 1. In case of the removal of the President from office or of his death or resignation, the Vice President shall become President. Section 2. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the Vice President, the President shall nominate a Vice President who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses of Congress. Section 3. Whenever the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and this is where it starts getting into relevant territory here, a written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office until he transmits them to a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the Vice President as acting President. Section 4. Whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of office as acting President. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists any longer, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office unless the Vice President and majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other bodies as Congress may by law provide transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of the office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose, if not in session. If the Congress within 21 days after receipt of the letter, or the latter, written declaration, or if Congress is not in session, within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President, or otherwise the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office. The key word being inability. Now, this may be a case of the President is going to, or needs to, let's say, undergo open heart surgery, for example. I seem to recall there was some procedure that President Reagan underwent during his presidency, where he signed such a document, temporarily turned the powers of the presidency over to Bush 41, who was vice president then, of course, and then took back those powers once, he had recovered, once he was out of surgery and was recovered enough to reassume his duties as president. It refers to inability. You're unconscious, you are injured, you've lost your marbles, you're no longer mentally competent, that kind of thing. It doesn't apply to this guy's crazy. It doesn't apply to this guy's an idiot, this guy's a buffoon, this guy's a moron. It doesn't apply to that. If you don't want a moron or an idiot in the White House, then don't bleeping nominate and elect him. The 25th Amendment does not apply to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not mentally or physically incapacitated. He's just an idiot. And the 25th Amendment says nothing about his cabinet, pulling what would amount to a coup to get rid of a president. That's not what it's for. Mental and physical incapacity. Trump is not mentally or physically incapacitated. He's just a moron. But that doesn't the 25th Amendment. Or Shapiro's shorter take on it. Ross Douthat had a column out last week in which he suggested that Republicans around Trump ought to vote the 25th Amendment to the Constitution and declare Trump unfit for office. This is silliness. First off, for all his myriad foibles, there's no evidence as of yet that Trump is mentally incapacitated. Second, do that really think that Republicans answerable to Trump's voters are going to oust him on the basis of that slim read? Third, this would set a rather, here we go, dangerous precedent of cabinets deciding that if a president becomes politically unpalatable, he can be replaced by an unelected coterie of ambitious insiders. Remember what, gobsmackingly enough, crazy Nancy Pelosi was saying in the last segment? Let's wait for the facts. Because we need stability. There you go. 7. Republicans won't impeach Trump for political reasons. This gets to, well, they're not going to impeach, they're not going to take out their own guy. There is no way that Republicans will impeach Trump, and because they run the House right now. The reason is simple. Nobody wants to be primaried for impeaching Trump absent the clearest violation of law in American history. And doubtless not even then. This makes sense. Democrats wouldn't even vote to impeach Bill Clinton for clear-cut perjury. Partisans will never impeach members of their own party, let alone the most polarizing president in modern American history, a vindictive politician who has shown zero willingness to let personal slights slide. And finally, number 8, Republicans will not impeach Trump for emotional reasons. Trump was absolutely correct when he said that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue in New York City and not lose his core base of supporters. Trump has a passionate following, and they'd rather go down with Trump than jettison him. As a thought exercise, let's posit the two most highly contrasting possibilities available. Possibility 1, Republicans impeach Trump, Vice President Pence replaces him, and Pence then works with Congress to pass every one of the Republicans' core priorities, up to and including Obamacare repeal, tax reform, religious liberty protections, and the rest. Republicans retain the House in 2018 based on their masterful work, and Pence is reelected. And then there's possibility 2. Trump continues to act like Muppet Beaker in the laboratory, and Republicans lose the House in 2018, at which point the Democrats impeach Trump, who goes on to lose to Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris in 2020. Well, this really is just a variation on what the Never Trump argument was in the 2016 election. Would most Republicans favor scenario 1 or scenario 2? Obviously, scenario 1 looks a lot more appealing. But the answer, amazingly, is probably scenario 2, because tribalism makes idiots of all who succumb to it. Even if most Republicans were given to accept the givens here, and they wouldn't, of course, they'd claim no matter the circumstance that Trump is the only path to victory, even though he's not. They would rather keep Trump around in order to stick it to the left. How Trump has stuck anything to the left is still a mystery. The left is getting everything they want. You remember the omnibus that Trump signed rather than vetoing? This is why I say that Democrats could co-opt Trump so easily. They could totally chain him to their agenda. He's already giving it to them as it is. So how keeping Trump around is sticking it to the left when all Trump is doing is sticking it to himself? Anybody's guess. See, that's true even if it meant advancing none of their core agenda elements and handing power to the Democrats. Because they're totally deluded. They're in the land of make-believe. They have been for 2 years, frankly. It's more important to them to bathe in leftist tears, even though it's tears of hysterical laughter, Even if leftists get to take the government back and then use it as a club with which to beat conservatives. This fight is no longer about advancing policy. And here's a clue for you. It never was. It's about war with the left. Even as the alt-right becomes exactly like the left. Even if that war ends with the Democrats and media shooting the Republican wounded. I tell these people, I tell Trump supporters these same things every single day. And I just get the usual tiresome personal abuse in the process. You know, oh, well, Hillary is your gal, and you're a Hillary supporter. And, you know, they just, now it's just a question. See, these are people that have not moved on beyond November the 8th, 2016. They've not moved beyond it. They've not moved on. They cling to that like the rope keeping them from going down for the third time, because that's all they've got. The trumpetancy is a dumpster fire. It is a disaster. It is a sinking ship. And so all they had to hang on to is November the 8th, 2016. That's all they've got. Trump won and you can't handle it. How do you handle that? Mrs. Clinton lost. Trump won. Move on. But they are the ones that can't handle the fact that the Trump presidency is a disaster. And so they shoot the messenger. Which is, I mean, I've gotten so used to it that it's really it's amazing how they don't seem to get that there's a trolling aspect to this. And the best part is I can troll to my heart's content, but I'm trolling with the truth. It is fun. It is fun. Oh, and here's number 9. Sorry, there's 9 of them. Yeah, that'll work. Trump's mistakes make it nearly impossible to defend him, at least if you have 1 ounce of intellectual and personal integrity and honor. The biggest problem for those of us who wish for Republicans to move their agenda forward is that we have no capacity to ably defend a president who makes it impossible to defend him. I spent my entire political life fighting the leftist media, and I will continue to do so. But the way to win a fight is to go in armed with facts and arguments, not tribalist anger. Fighting for Trump's latest narrative is the political equivalent of being a frontline Soviet soldier at Stalingrad. Trump partisans expect you to run to the front unarmed and then threaten to shoot you from behind if you don't keep advancing. Now, the right may win its own Stalingrad against its perceived media and Democrat enemies, but there won't be a lot of conservatives left to enjoy it. Trump has an obligation to do a better job if he expects honest people to keep defending his behavior. And given the rank impossibility of that, that's why we never Trumpers have never bothered to start. Here's a novel twist of a take on the whole Comey firings, Comey memo. Trump's an idiot. Saw David French at the corner, May 17th, the National Review. The Donald Trump inquiry isn't mainly about Comey memo. Writing in the Hill, law professor Jonathan Turley, well, Turley, but I like my version better, is unimpressed with the argument that the alleged Comey memo may provide evidence that Donald Trump committed an impeachable offense. Quote, "If this is food for obstruction of justice, it is still an awfully thin soup. Some commentators seem to be alleging criminal conduct in office or calling for impeachment before Trump completed the words of his inaugural oath of office. Not surprising, within minutes of the New York Times report, the response was a chorus of breathless, gotcha announcements. But this memo is neither the Pentagon Papers nor the Watergate tapes. Indeed, it raises as many questions for Comey as it does Trump in terms of the alleged underlying conduct. Close quote. Andy McCarthy at NR wrote a piece noting that if the alleged contents of this memo are considered grounds for obstruction, then he can also point to Barack Obama's public statements opening on the merits of the FBI's investigation of Hillary Clinton. Here's that quote. On its face, Trump's statement does not amount to obstruction of justice. Trump could be said to be putting pressure on his subordinate, just as Obama was putting pressure on his subordinates, Comey included, last April. But assuming the Times is right about the memo, Trump did not order Comey to drop the case. In fact, Trump's statement is consistent with encouraging Comey to use his own judgment, with the understanding that Trump hoped Comey would come out favorably to Flynn. Close quote. Viewing the memo in isolation, French agrees with McCarthy and Turdley. A request to drop the Flynn investigation is improper, but it's light years from actual obstruction of justice or an impeachable offense. But the obstruction inquiry isn't just or even mainly about the memo. As French wrote previously, it's about an entire chain of events that is far more problematic together than any one segment in isolation. In other words, context. It's one thing to ask Comey to stop investigating Flynn. It's another thing entirely to fire him just a few weeks later after he fails to comply with Trump's request. It's even worse to then mislead the country about the reason for the termination. If there's an intelligent investigation, it will focus on linkage. If meaningful evidence exists that Trump fired Comey either entirely or in part because Comey refused a suggestion that he drop the investigation, then Trump's presidency is in real danger. Well, not until 2019, of course. Especially if his approval rating plunges even lower than it already has. If the evidence indicates, which it will never do, by the way, Trump is going to be at 40%, upper 30s, low 40s, or right around 40% for his entire presidency because tribalism. It's the same reason why Trump will never be above 50%. Because tribalism. Simple as that. No Democrat is ever going to support Trump or give him a positive approval rating, and no Republican is ever going to withdraw their support or give him a thumbs down on approval rating. They're never going to disapprove of the job he's doing. It's just every president in this current political climate is going to be between 40 and 50%. Simple as that. If the evidence indicates that the events are entirely unrelated or the evidence is too murky to draw any reasonable conclusion, then Trump will live to outrage another day. Again, this is the appearance in the phrase, appearance of impropriety. This is Trump's problem. He may well not have any impropriety in Russiagate, but he goes out of his way to create as much of an appearance of same as he possibly can. That's why Trump is an idiot. I've always been a big fan of the Beetle Bailey comic strip by Mort Walker. A lot of good social commentary in that strip over the years. And, interesting and funny characters, too. From General Half-Track to Captain Scabbard, Lieutenant Fuzz, Lieutenant Flap. Frankly, I always thought that the name should have been reversed. I know, that's racist. And then there was, Zero and Killer, and Zero was the dumb guy, and Killer was the womanizer. And Beetle was basically the lazy guy. He tried to do as little as he possibly could. But there was one other character who was kind of the intellectual of the group. Plato. He was more the heavy-set guy. And there was one strip where the punchline was, things are never so bad that they can't still get worse. That's kind of a pessimist's optimism when you stop and think about it. And that was pretty much the theme of this Jim Garrity Morning Jolt entry toward the end of last week. Now, I'll leave the door open a crack to the possibility that Trump is indeed the victim of a group of unidentified U.S. officials making up stories about him and feeding those fictitious allegations to a hostile press. If there are tapes of conversations in the White House, those tapes could clear up two recent controversies immediately. Maybe Trump really didn't say anything sensitive, secret, or inappropriate in his Oval Office conversation with Russian officials. If I see an unedited, verified recording or transcript of that conversation and it refutes the story from the Washington Post and other news organizations, I'll say mea culpa. I mean, the previous day, Garrity walked through the reasons that the Post account sounds plausible. Similarly, maybe Comey is mischaracterizing his conversations with Donald Trump. Maybe Trump never asked for something inappropriate, like, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He's a good guy. I hope you can let this go. But if there isn't a taping system in the White House, which Trump clearly implied there was, Trump should stop sending out tweets suggesting there is one. We had the odd situation a few days earlier of White House propagandist Sean Spicer repeatedly insisting Trump had been clear in his tweet about tapes of the Trump-Comey conversations, but that tweet wasn't clear at all, and Spicer refused to confirm or deny that there was a taping system in the White House. The non-denial denial, if you recall. It's really a binary question, yes or no. Are there tapes of these conversations or not? Remember what Spicer said? I got nothing for you on that. Which tells me Spicer really didn't know. And so he dared not give an answer one way or the other without knowing that for certain. See, if those tapes exist and they support Trump's account of events and not the account of anonymous sources and Comey, it means Trump has exculpatory evidence and is choosing to not release it and expose his accusers as liars and publicly humiliate them. I mean, if he's got the tapes and the tapes back up his version of the story and use that to humiliate his enemies and prove that his accusers are liars, wouldn't that be right in Trump's counter-punching wheelhouse? You'd think it would be. I mean, how often do people choose to withhold evidence that clears them of accusations? This doesn't have to remain a mystery. Charlie Cook is right. Congress should subpoena Comey's memos immediately. Subpoena any tapes of conversations with Comey, as Lindsey Graham suggested too. Let's get to the bottom of this. As we talked about in the previous video/podcast simulcast, the Senate Judiciary Committee, well, they didn't subpoena the Comey, the tapes of the White House tapes, alleged, of Trump's conversations with Comey, the conversation in question, but they requested them. Beyond that, I suspect many Republicans find this exhausting. We keep seeing day one errors well past day 100. John Podhoretz asks the tough but fair questions about why Trump keeps shooting himself in the balls. Quote, this was in the New York Post, or maybe it was in commentary, one of the two. Let's just Trump was talking casually about a guy he thought was a good fellow whom he was compelled to fire, but whom he still liked and didn't want to see hurt. That'd be nice, right? It would also be a sign that Trump is a fool. What? Did Trump think Comey just fell off a turnip truck and wouldn't be taking notes on what Trump said to him? Huh? Huh? Did he think Comey had climbed to the top of the greasy pole without possessing the classic survival skills of a successful bureaucrat? Hmm? And having had this conversation with Comey, what on earth would then lead Trump to fire the man with whom he had had such a stupidly casual conversation about a sensitive investigation? Isn't this the sort of thing about people that a seen-it-all deal-maker is supposed to know better than the ordinary politicians who make such terrible deals? We Americans felt compelled to bring in a famous businessman to fix what's broken? Well, if you bought the BS about why Trump was needed to be president of the United States, then yeah, you would think that. It's nowhere to be seen. None of it has been anywhere to be seen during the first 4 months and 7 days of the Trumpency. See, the White House staff could probably do a better job, but the problem is Trump's judgment. I mean, the White House staff can only work with what they're given to work with. And if they're put in impossible situations, then I don't know that they could do a better job because Trump has set them up to fail. I mean, notice this detail in the Times story. Quote, Trump told those present, including Vice President Pence and Attorney General Jeff Sessions, to leave the room except for Mr. Comey. I mean, it's almost like he didn't want any witnesses for what he was about to pressure Comey to do. How does Trump not realize how that looks? How is that possible? How does he not realize, oh boy, that doesn't look, I better not do that. That'll look terrible. That'd look like I was trying to cover something up. And yet it never occurs to Trump. Never occurs to Trump. Can you imagine what Pence and Sessions are thinking? Oh crap. Oh man. This is not good. This is not. He's making himself look like Nixon. Notice I said look like. Appearance of impropriety, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, in scandals, it's never the original crime. It's always the cover-up. I mean, boy, that doesn't look bad, does it? Let's remove anyone Trump trusts from the room who could verify his side of the story so we can discuss an extremely sensitive topic with a law enforcement official who is investigating his administration. What could possibly go wrong? Trump wanted to make the firing of James Comey as uncontroversial as possible. He needed to point to a slew of specific reasons for the decision besides the Russia investigation. And it's the kind of thing where, Democrats would say, well, no, that's just crap. It's really about the Russia investigation. But if you throw up enough chaff, the missile might hit that instead of you, right? I mean, Comey did botch part of his testimony before Congress a few weeks ago. Paying professional hackers $900,000 to hack into the phone of the San Bernardino killer certainly seems like a controversial decision. Omar Mateen was on the FBI watch list but still managed to perpetrate the Orlando attack. So was one of the Boston Marathon bombers. There's a case to be made that the FBI and the country would be well served by a clean slate and a fresh start. Back in January, during the transition. That's a case that Donald Trump has no interest in making because he's an idiot. The aforementioned Charlie Cook envisioned how a less idiotic president would handle an issue like this. In other words, this is what Trump should have done, but was not capable of doing. He would have spoken early and often to the leaders of both parties and taken care to ensure that the meetings were recorded. In addition, he would have consulted some well-respected figures, people with solid reputations and roles outside the fray, who could subsequently vouch for his authenticity. When it came to doing the deed, he would have explained his thinking to Comey and thereby ensured that he knew it was coming. And perhaps, given the likelihood of uproar, he would have made a speech or given a televised address in which he justified his move to the public. "I understand that this is unorthodox," he might have said, "but this question of James Comey continues to hang over the country, and I think it's time to move on." And then, having made his apology, he would have announced a bipartisan panel charged with picking Comey's replacement. This is what a professional would have done. Instead, Sean Spicer is thrown out there in front of the cameras with an hour's warning and no information about why Trump made the decision. You can't blame it on the White House communication shop. You just can't. Apparently, even Steve Darth Bannon was among the Trump advisors who wanted the president to hold off on firing Comey. If Darth Bannon is saying, "Whoa, dude, probably a good idea to take your hand off, or your finger off the trigger, huh? Mm-hmm. What do you think?" I mean, when Bannon is calling for prudence and deliberation, you should probably slow down. Again, what's the White House staff supposed to do in this situation? Just how well can they serve the president when the president himself keeps making these decisions like this? Notice how often lately Republicans are asked to step in and defend Trump, not because of the policies he allegedly wants to enact, not because of his legislative agenda or his vision for the country, but for his own impulsive decision-making, or in other words, because he's an idiot. So, as I have teased ever since episode 1 of this 5-part, what do you call it, chronicling, documentary, telling the tale of the worst 2 weeks yet of the Trumpidency, a special counsel on Russiagate was appointed. Now, I'm sure Trumpers think that's terrible news. It's horrible. It's an insult. It's an outrage. It's really the best thing that could happen for Donald Trump. First of all, because of who was appointed. Now, it's not an independent counsel. You know, this was an appointment made by Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. It wasn't made by Attorney General Jeff Sessions because he had recused himself of anything related to Russia 4 months ago, if you recall. So this is a special counsel, a special prosecutor, not an independent counsel. That went away 18 years ago when the Democrats got tired of taking their own medicine over all of Bill Clinton's scandals. So this is not an independent counsel, an independent prosecutor. This is works for the answers to the Justice Department. But the special investigator, special prosecutor in question is former FBI Director Robert Mueller, James Comey's predecessor at the FBI. Robert Mueller has a sterling reputation for honor and integrity, for being a straight shooter who's apolitical, calls it as he sees it. It's an outstanding choice because everybody both sides can trust the results that he produces, or at least as much as you can trust in the American politics of 2017. You're not going to get better than Robert Mueller. That's good for the Trump regime. It is. Because this will, pull the congressional investigations back. This will take more of it out of the media. Because Mueller's not going to be leaking anything. I mean, and it creates a thing where Republicans can say, "Oh, let's let the special prosecutor, investigate and draw his conclusion, and they can focus on other things." It's good for Trump if Trump has the brains, which he doesn't, to take advantage of it. To get Russiagate out of the headlines. That's what Trump needs more than anything else. And of course, he doesn't have the brains to do that. The editors at National Review Online point out the most obvious thing about the appointment of Robert Mueller, or the appointment of a special prosecutor on Russiagate of any sort. Trump brought it on himself. He brought it on himself by his own stupid-ass, egotistical, brittle, emotionally insecure actions. I mean, Russiagate is becoming a cover-up that for a crime that never happened, in all likelihood. I mean, like I said earlier, in any scandal, it's invariably the cover-up that's the problem, not the original crime. In this case, there may not even be an original crime. But Trump created the cover-up anyway because it was to cover up his own butthurt. And so, the Trump-Russia saga has entered its special counsel phase. Now, this is strange, given that a special prosecutor is typically reserved for when a crime has been alleged. And not only has no serious penal law violation been credibly alleged against Donald Trump or any of his associates, but as we have repeatedly noted, the FBI was engaged in a counterintelligence, not a criminal investigation as it relates to Russia. A more suitable approach would have been an independent commission like the one established to investigate the September 11th attacks. But Trump's ham-handed firing of FBI Director James Comey, the White House's misleading account of how and why Comey was ousted, and news that Trump personally asked Comey to drop the Flynn probe created enough of a cloud around the FBI investigation that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein felt compelled to act. If Trump had intended to create the conditions for the appointment of a special prosecutor, he wouldn't have acted any differently. And of course, he didn't intend to do that. It's just Trump's an idiot. The appointment of Mueller may create, for now, greater public confidence in the investigation, but there are significant downsides. Special prosecutors have a tendency to begin in one place and end up somewhere wildly different. Whitewater turned into the Lewinsky scandal, although that was really because Janet Reno, instead of appointing a different special prosecutor for each Clinton scandal, just kept piling everything up on Ken Starr's plate. And they also have a tendency, lo and behold, to want to prosecute. This was most recently demonstrated by Patrick Fitzgerald, who in the mid-2000s used his role as special prosecutor in the Valerie Plame affair to go hammer and tongs after Bush confidant Karl Rove, and failing that, to railroad Louis Scooter Libby into prison. Now, this is why I say that the worst that it's going to get for Trump in Russiagate will be Michael Flynn, maybe Carter Page, maybe Paul Manafort, but that's as far as it's going to go. And particularly Michael Flynn, because Manafort and Page seem to be cooperating with Senate investigators. Not Flynn. He's going the fifth, pleading the fifth. So yeah. So it may, the worst that'll happen for Trump is that a few minor flunkies will be, or former advisors will be, their scalps will be bagged, but that'll be it. Because that's how every post-Watergate scandal is gone. Now, whether the new investigation spirals out of control will depend entirely, here we go, on the discipline and rectitude of the special counsel. And, of course, Donald Trump. To his credit, Rosenstein has appointed Robert Mueller, James Comey's predecessor at the FBI, the second longest-serving FBI director behind J. Edgar Hoover. Mueller garnered respect from Republicans and Democrats during his tenure leading the Bureau. His 10-year term, which began in 2001 under George W. Bush, was renewed by Barack Obama in 2011. Mueller, who retired in 2013, is known for sober leadership and for a distaste for partisan games. See how it's ought to be good for Trump? And several Democrats have praised Rosenstein's choice. It's important to note that Mueller is not an independent counsel of the as I mentioned earlier. Since 1999, when both parties allowed the Ethics in Government Act to expire, after the Clinton years, Democrats were less enamored of the special prosecutor concept. Special prosecutors have been subordinates of the executive branch, as they should be. Now, it's anyone's guess where this goes from here. Mueller has a wide investigative brief, and we will no doubt be hearing more about Messrs. Flynn, Manafort, and Page, the Trump associates with known ties to the Kremlin, and Roger Stone, the outlandish gadfly who worked for Trump for years. So far, despite the Democrat hysteria, we haven't seen anything that suggests anything worse than that these figures are shady operators who never should have been close to a presidential nominee, let alone a president. But we want to see where the facts lead. I still can't believe that Nancy Pelosi was echoing those sentiments. Ideally, Mueller will be able to conclude his investigation expeditiously, but it's possible this could drag out. The special counsel appointed to investigate Whitewater in 1994 outlasted the Clinton administration. For this reason, among others, no administration ever wants a special counsel. But Donald Trump has no one to blame but himself that he now has one. So you would think that even at this late date, belatedly as it is, Trump might realize, okay, I dug myself a hole, I'm going to stop digging. Take the shovel away from me, put me in handcuffs if you have to, bind me and gag me, keep me away from Twitter. Just please keep me from making this any worse. Because remember, the only reason there's a special prosecutor in Russiagate is because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump's big mouth, Donald Trump's foolishness, Donald Trump's brittle ego. It's his own doing. He braided himself enough rope to create a special prosecutor noose. You would think at this point he would be able to realize, no, I really screwed the pooch on this one. I'm going to back off. I'm going to focus on being president. I'm going to focus on my alleged agenda. That's what Trump is doing. No, that's not what he's doing. Are you kidding? Trump is Trump, ladies and gentlemen. So, still on May 17th, last week, Jennifer Van Laar, Red State, headline, Trump responds to special counsel appointment in his trademark style. Because Trump's an idiot. The White House was blindsided by the Wednesday afternoon appointment of a special prosecutor to investigate any potential links between the Russian government and the Trump campaign, Politico reports. Of course they're blindsided because they're all idiots. How could you be blindsided by this? And CNN's Laura Jarrett is reporting that Attorney General Jeff Sessions was not informed about the order until after it was signed. Important timeline of events here per source. Deputy Attorney General's office only informed White House counsel and Jeff Sessions after the special counsel order was signed. Well, Sessions is recused, so it wasn't his call. But of course, Donald Trump just didn't say anything. Silence out of the White House. No, not. Donald Trump responded to the news quickly and with his usual self-destructive bluster. Here was a statement that he released. At least he didn't put it out on Twitter. As I have stated many times, a thorough investigation will confirm what we already know. There was no collusion between my campaign and any foreign entity. I look forward to this matter concluding quickly. In the meantime, I will never stop fighting for the people and the issues that matter most to the future of our country. I suppose it could have been worse. Now, if we already knew there wouldn't be a need for this. For the sake of the country, I hope there's not. And as some are already pointing out, the special counsel could also find the identity of people doing the leaking and unmasking. Surprisingly, Trump hasn't put that spin on it yet. I'm sure that's also within former FBI Director Mueller's remit, imprimatur, if you will. We shall see. But, well, it does get worse for Trump. Now, that statement was kind of innocuous. I mean, it's better for the White House to release statements than for Trump to go on Twitter. And here's an example of what I mean. Now, that statement that was released from the White House, it wasn't bad. It didn't dig the hole deeper. Basically, he was saying was, I have confidence. We're going to cooperate with the investigation, and I have confidence that we'll come out A-OK, squeaky clean. We totally cleared, totally exonerated. I know we're not guilty. I know we had no connections with the Russians throughout the campaign, blah, blah, blah. The statement would have been enough. Because that came from the White House communication shop. So the statement wouldn't have been enough. But, of course, Trump can't leave it to that. So, he went to Twitter. And Joe Cunningham brings this from May 18th, the very next day, because, of course, early morning is when Trump likes to sit on the toilet and play with his phone. I wish he could teach himself to play Tetris. He'd get himself in a lot less trouble. But here we go. After Robert Mueller was appointed to be the special counsel on the Russia probe investigation, Donald Trump released a statement saying he looked forward to this matter concluding quickly. The statement was a sign of victory for people who seek to control what words the president releases to the public. There are people whose only job is to make sure that the right message gets released to the public, and these people gave Trump a good statement. I've already established that. Then he bleeped it all up by not They bleeped it all up by not taking his phone away. Oh, boy. His 8 a.m. tweets came right on schedule the following morning, and this is all so unfair, you guys. Here's one Trump tweet from early morning, May 18th, 2017, which, by the way, was the 37th anniversary of the eruption of Mount St. Helens, just for you Pacific Northwest history buffs out there. With all of the illegal acts that took place in the Clinton campaign and Obama administration, There was never a special counsel appointed. To which the answer is, so? I mean, should there have been? Demonstrate. Was that ever going to happen with Democrats in power? Not on your life. What does this have to do with Russiagate? Absolutely nothing. Because whatever else you can say about Hillary Clinton, whatever else you can say about Barack Obama, and there's ample amounts you can say about both of those creatures, one thing you cannot say about them is that either one is stupid. Like Donald Trump. Now, if we stop there, even that, while it's typical Trump and it's whiny and it's childish, it wouldn't be as bad as it soon became. While this particular whiny nonsense is quite annoying, the fact is that Obama and Mrs. Clinton both got away with some shady stuff without any particular criticism, save from the right and a few honorable reporters. However, we just spent the last 8 years complaining about the guy who was complaining about the previous 8 years, and now we're planning to spend the next 4 years continuing to complain about the last 8 years for the same thing. If that's too confusing, well, then Jay Caruso put it nicely the same morning, May 18th. Quote, Trump is impetuous, prone to running his mouth at inopportune times, lies with ease, and cannot get out of his own way, which is a good reason why his legislative agenda is sitting there like horse droppings on a Manhattan street on a hot day. The same people, however, never see fit to criticize Trump. They're more concerned with saying, well, what about Barack Obama? Well, what about him? He's no longer president of the United States. Thank you, God. So I didn't think he was ever going to leave. See, I find it infuriating when people use the Obama standard to measure Trump. In other words, can you set the bar any lower? Now, conservatives or cuckservatives will argue Obama was a worse president than Jimmy Carter. Well, that's one hell of a benchmark. Many conservatives seem too content to measure Trump to the standards of Obama. In fact, I would argue, though, that Obama was not a worse president than Jimmy Carter. He had worse policies than even Jimmy Carter. But Obama was much more effective as a president than Jimmy Carter ever was. Hell, Jimmy Carter was ousted after one term. Barack Obama got reelected. By that alone, you can't say that Obama was a worse president than Jimmy Carter. He had worse policies, but he wasn't a worse president. You see, the fact is that while true, it is whining to the point of distraction, and it is simple petulance. This is not something a president does. Or at least it shouldn't be. I mean, Obama did. Oh, damn it. Now you got me doing it. This is bipartisanizing Barack Obama. Yeah, Trumplicans have become as bad as Obamunists. They have become their enemy. And they don't even see it. They don't even realize it. At any case, at any rate, that wasn't Trump's only tweet. Oh, no, he can never stop when he's behind. That tweet alone was enough, but as we know, Trump has to outdo himself. With this singular piece of breathtaking solipsism. Quote, this is 4:52 a.m., May 18, 2017. this is the single greatest witch hunt of a politician in American history. This is how we know that Donald Trump doesn't know jack shit about American history. See, here's the thing. He's crying over the appointment of a special counsel being called into an investigation he says he's not personally under. Why then is he so worried about it? Well, that answer is easy. Anything that is used as an attempt to undermine him is, as I have said before, an attack on his pride, his cosmic, narcissistic personality disorder drenched ego, his manhood. He has to lash out and defend himself, even when, as he has said multiple times, there is nothing from which to be defended. Or in other words, Donald Trump is an idiot. As far as the unfairness of it all goes, remember when the left, isn't it leftists that complain about things being unfair? Connect the dots, folks. As far as the unfairness of it all goes, I leave you with the words of Red State Editor-in-Chief Caleb Howe, responding to Trump saying no one has ever been treated as unfairly as he himself has. Well, Julius Caesar was stabbed to death by his friends. And, well, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. James Garfield was shot and later died. William McKinley was assassinated. John F. Kennedy was assassinated. President Reagan was shot. Look, if you're going to run for president as a Republican and you win, even if you're a fake Republican like Donald Trump, being the subject of a Democrat witch hunt is part of the job. Now, this story is probably not as much of a bombshell as it might appear outwardly. Here's the headline at Red State. Susan Wright, by the way, my gal Susan Wright. Trump associates urge he hire outside lawyer as Russia investigation becomes criminal one. Now, again, that sounds like, whoa, this is getting, in the words of Martin Lawrence in Bad Boys, shit just got real. But is that really surprising? That Trump is being advised to lawyer up? I mean, that's just taking precautions. That's just, getting your ducks in a row. That's just self-protection. I know for a fact, if you have ever been in a legal deposition, if you're giving a position, or facing grand jury testimony, both of which I've done in my time, you don't want to be there without a lawyer of your own, gentlemen. Trust me on this. I've been in that situation, except I didn't have the brains in my particular attorney, and I was the only one there who didn't have his lawyer with him, and I have never felt more naked in my entire life. If I had actually been stark naked, I wouldn't have felt as naked as I did not had a lawyer sitting next to me. Everybody else there had their lawyer. I didn't think to call mine. And boy, you just feel exposed. You feel like the prey right as the predator is about to eat you. So that is the bombshell that it might appear to be at first glance, but we'll cover it anyway. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein confirmed to senators in a closed-door meeting that, this is from May 18th, that the investigation into Russian influence in the 2016 election has morphed beyond just a counterintelligence investigation and now includes a criminal investigation. It is believed that the news of memos kept by former FBI Director James Comey have necessitated a need for outside legal counsel for Donald Trump, and his advisors are pressing him to hire someone. Will he listen to his advisors? For once. Or at least, aside from James Mattis, and maybe H.R. McNair. Well, maybe H.R. McMaster, but McMaster is Trump's pooper scooper on foreign policy. Mattis is the only one that he appears to ever really seriously listen to. Here's a quote from the New York Times, at any rate. While the office of president is represented by the White House counsel, presidents in the past have employed outside lawyers when their private actions were called into question. I forget the name of Bill Clinton's private lawyer. He had so many. But he, that definitely came into play during the Clinton dark age. Trump has signaled he is likely to hire a new lawyer, but he has not yet made a decision, according to 3 people who have spoken with him. Aides to Trump did not immediately comment on his discussions. Trump is said to recognize that he needs help beyond the White House counsel, but he is deeply cautious in selecting people he trusts, and he adds new people to his orbit slowly. You better not dilly-dally on this. I mean, if the deep state is really out to get him, he ought to declare red alert, all hands battle stations, it seems to me. And like Susan Wright puts it, he may not have the luxury of moving slowly. Those in the Trump inner circle are recommending that he go outside of his usual counsel as well as the White House counsel and find, tell me this is not good advice, folks, find an independent lawyer who has experience inside Washington, D.C. Yeah, there's an idea. Gee, why didn't anybody think of that before? According to associates of Donald Trump, the president has become mistrustful of many around him because he's paranoid, amid a spate of leaks about West Wing dysfunction. It's dysfunctional largely, if not entirely, because of Donald Trump. He is relying heavily on, guess what, his daughter Ivanka and son-in-law Jared Kushner, who has his own Russian contacts, because of course he does, as well as his longtime spokeswoman Hope Hicks and his personal bodyguard turned White House assistant Keith Schiller. He has also been reaching out to several old campaign aides. Oh boy, here we go. The campaign manager he fired last June, the vicious niblet Corey Lewandowski, was spotted twice in the West Wing last week. Close quote. So, in essence, it appears Trump is trying to get the band back together. To the high point of his experience as candidate Trump. He's already living in the past, off past glories. Because really, remember, Trump never expected to win. Trump only wanted to prove that he could win the election. He didn't actually want to be president, as he's found out the hard way since. I mean, that's got to be better than the realities of the job that he really didn't want. He just wanted to prove he could win. And much of this current nightmare for Trump could have been avoided had he kept his mouth shut and deleted his Twitter account. Would that really have been worse than this? Speaking of pacing one's self, it is a constant struggle for me to pace myself with superlatives of describing Donald Trump's idiocy. You're so tempted to say, oh, now I've seen everything. I cannot believe this. This is just, it boggles the mind. And then the next day or A few days later or the following week, something else comes from Donald Trump. Donald Trump does something else even stupider than that, and then you're like, well, what do you say then? So if this sounds like I'm understating it, think of it as I'm just letting it speak for itself. Now, we've established, long since established, the context for all of this, that whatever connection that Donald Trump and or his campaign did or did not have with the Russians, the likelihood is, like I said before, the worst it'll get for the Trump regime is that, Flynn, Manafort, Page, one or some or all might get bagged, might get charged with something, but it's not going to touch Trump because that's how every post-Watergate scandal has worked. Nobody, there's never a direct line all the way back to the Oval Office. Never. I mean, if if there had been an independent counsel looking into IRS Gate or any of the other Obama scandals, would they have gotten all the way back to Obama? No, I guarantee you they wouldn't. Because that's just not how these things work. I mean, that gives you an indication of how monumentally stupid and clueless. Now Richard Nixon was a brilliant man, but he knew nothing of cover-ups. And that's why his cover-up was always 2 or 3 steps behind. And Bill Clinton was a master of cover-ups, but, pecker tracks are kind of hard to cover up, at least without a pallet of Kleenex, and of course he didn't do so. That was the one thing in which he let himself get too close. And of course Barack Obama, he didn't even need to orchestrate cover-ups of anything because his people were already on the same page, already on the same sheet of music, and knew exactly what they needed to do. And they didn't need to be told that by anybody in the White House, much less by Barack Obama himself. Now, in Trump's case, like we say, there may be nothing to Russiagate. Certainly not connected personally to Trump, but he's acting like he's guilty as hell. That's how he's brought all of this upon himself. Now, this is the context for this headline at the Daily Beast, May 18th, 2017. Buckle your seatbelts, put your trays in the upright and locked position, okay? Here we go. Donald Trump talked Michael Flynn into White House job, the National Security Advisor's post, and wants him back in his administration while he's still under criminal investigation. There are no words, folks. There are no words. Donald Trump pressured a reluctant Michael Flynn into accepting a job as the White House's top national security official, national security advisor, even after Flynn warned the president that he was under investigation over undisclosed lobbying on behalf of a foreign government. Even Flynn was warning him, "No, I don't think you want me there, Mr. President. I got problems over here. And if you appoint me, then they become your problems. You don't need to be connected with this." There was Michael Flynn, a loyal Trumplican, trying to warn him, trying to do him a favor. Don't appoint me to this. You don't need to be connected with my problems. Trump did it anyway. And the president's continued loyalty to his ousted former aide is so strong, in fact, that the two have remained in touch despite the potential that their communication could be portrayed as White House interference in a federal investigation. And now both men could pay a huge price for it. Again, there are no words. He did not want to be a national security advisor, Michael Ledeen, a friend of the retired Army general, told the Daily Beast on a week ago Thursday. He didn't want to be in the government. He wanted to go back to private life, but Trump insisted on it. He likes him. He trusted him. He was comfortable with him. Flynn was reluctant but honored when offered the post, according to a senior Trump administration official, and only accepted it at the president's urging. A third source with direct knowledge of Trump transition team discussions confirmed that Flynn did not want the National Security Advisor post, though he claimed Flynn was instead hoping for a position in the intelligence community, preferably Director of National Intelligence or the Director of the CIA. Trump's pressuring of Flynn to take the job came even though Flynn had informed the Trump transition team that he was under active. Flynn informed them! Which raises the question of, well, how did Mike Pence not know this? Flynn had informed the Trump transition team that he was under active FBI investigation over undisclosed lobbying on behalf of a Dutch company, lobbying that Flynn now admits he may have advanced the interests of the Turkish government. Trump's affinity for Flynn apparently led the president to urge former FBI Director James Comey before his firing the previous week to drop or ease a federal investigation of Flynn, according to Comey's written account of a meeting with the president. But Trump doesn't just hope that Flynn will beat the rap. Several sources close to Flynn and to the administration tell the Daily Beast that Trump has expressed his hopes that a resolution of the FBI's investigation in Flynn's behavior might allow Flynn to rejoin the White House in some capacity. A scenario some of Trump's closest advisors in and outside the West Wing have assured him absolutely should not happen. That's not how politics works. It's not. Those sources said Trump didn't believe Flynn should be under investigation in the first place. Well, obviously, Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. Of course, we knew that already. Trump feels really, really, really bad about firing him, and he genuinely thinks if the investigation over Flynn is over, Flynn can come back, said one White House official. Well, what he feels is wrong. One former FBI official and a second government official said Trump thought he owed Flynn for how things ended up and was determined to clear Flynn's name and bring him back to the White House regardless of the facts. All of the officials spoke on the condition of anonymity so as to speak freely on sensitive matters. In other words, he wants to use Flynn as another extended middle finger. That's what this is all about. It isn't about Flynn. It's about Trump. The constant need for Trump to get catharsis against his perceived enemies. That's what this is. Simple as that. He wants to bring Flynn back and make him National Security Advisor again and go, meh! That's all this is. He doesn't have loyalty to Flynn. He just wants to use Flynn as an obscene gesture. After less than a month on the job, Flynn resigned when it was revealed that he had failed to disclose conversations with the Russian ambassador to Washington regarding U.S. sanctions against the country. And then, of course, briefed Vice President Pence on to tell lies unwittingly, well, maybe unwittingly, about it. Now, those conversations could feature prominently in ongoing FBI and congressional investigations into Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. Those investigations were why Trump's White House attorneys warned him repeatedly against communicating with Flynn after his firing, as the Daily Beast reported last week. Apparently, Trump doesn't listen to his own lawyers. Because Trump doesn't listen to anybody. Because he's an idiot. Trump and Flynn have stayed in touch, according to Yahoo News report a week ago Thursday, confirmed by multiple White House and administration sources. One person close to Flynn said he has kept up lines of communication since offering his resignation to protect the president from the growing controversy involving the Trump campaign's ties to Russian government interests. A longtime Trump confidant also confirmed to the Daily Beast that Trump had mentioned to him that he had communicated with Flynn in the past few weeks, long after Flynn had been given the boot from the Trump regime. The White House staffer recalled hearing of Trump conversations with Flynn since his firing in February, though it was not clear what they discussed. Supposedly, they've spoken since Flynn was fired, the staffer said. The president clearly feels bad about how things went down. News that they had remained in touch flatly contradicts repeated and adamant White House denials week before last, that Trump and his former national security advisor had been communicating since Flynn's ouster. In other words, White House lies again. Multiple White House officials claimed to the Daily Beast that no such communication had occurred due to the intervention of White House attorneys. The White House did not respond to questions on Thursday attempting to square that discrepancy. Flynn's lawyer, Robert Kellner, also did not respond to multiple requests for comment. Trump's apparent plea for the FBI to step back from its probe of Flynn set off allegations by congressional Democrats of obstruction of justice. Revelations that Trump has been in contact with Flynn and openly mused about a new job for him could add more heft to those allegations. Oh, could? Could? The last thing the White House would want is an allegation of conspiracy, witness tampering, or coordination, National Security Attorney Mark Zaid told the Daily Beast week before last. If Flynn is going to be indicted or certainly under investigation, then I would want the president to be as far away from him as possible. Such conversations would create huge issues, according to Zaid's law partner, Brad Moss, talking with see where this is headed. Talking with witnesses is what got Nixon in trouble. And there may be no personal Trump connection to the Russians at all. And yet he may get himself impeached anyway because he's an idiot. But the idiot bombshells just never stop, ladies and gentlemen. The next one came out a week ago Friday. 8-day headline. Red State. Trump bragged to Russians that he fired nut job Comey. Joe Cunningham reporting. Apparently, Donald Trump's meeting with the Russians is just a font of salacious stories. At one point, according to a document summarizing the meeting, Trump told the Russians, "I just fired the head of the FBI. He was crazy, a real nut job." Of course, he did take copious notes. And that's not all! Here is a quote from the New York Times. Trump said the aforementioned, "I just fired the head of the FBI. He was crazy, a real nut job." According to the document, which was read to the New York Times by an American official. "I face great pressure because of Russia. That's taken off." Oh, no, it's not. No wonder Sergei Lavrov was laughing his ass off. Trump added, "I'm not under investigation." Like that's a badge of honor. You wouldn't be under investigation if you kept your mouth shut. Because you're under investigation now. Conversation during a May 10th meeting the day after he fired Comey. Reinforces the notion that Trump dismissed him primarily because of the Bureau's investigation into possible collusion between his campaign and Russian operatives. Trump said as much in one televised interview, but the White House has offered changing justifications for the firing. And in case you were wondering the source of this particular document, Well, the White House document that contained Trump's comments was based on notes taken from inside the Oval Office and has been circulated as the official account of the meeting. One official read quotations to the Times, and the second official confirmed the broad outlines of the discussion. These are not Trump enemies, folks. These are people trying to do one of two things, however much a one versus the other. You be the judge, but they're trying to, one, save Trump from himself, and two, failing that, save their own asses. Probably because they can't believe what they're hearing. These are OMG notes, if I've ever heard them. These are people that does that ever happen? Does the President of the United States brag to enemy representatives about how he's fired people in his administration? Does that ever happen? Yeah, it never happened before. I guess it's happened now. So here's the thing. Surely there is someone, somewhere in this administration, whose job is to carefully control what the president says and when. Maybe there's someone who is even supposed to coach the president on what to say and when. If this person cannot do this job, this person needs to be fired. Although it's more a case of, if this person's not going to be allowed to do their job, then what's the point of their even being there? And here we go. If this person is not being allowed to do this job by the president, then the president needs a special security detail that just tackles him and rushes him out of the room whenever he starts to say things he shouldn't say. Or opens Twitter. These are not things you say to an enemy power. Any foreign power, hostile or otherwise. These are also not things you say if you want people to think you aren't politically motivated when you fire the head of the FBI and that you are innocent. Someone's got to muzzle Donald Trump for his own good, folks. There just aren't words, folks. And we're not done yet. You see, bragging about firing James Comey to Sergei Lavrov wasn't the only thing that Trump let spill in that meeting on May 10th, the day after he fired James Comey. He disclosed classified information to the Russians in that meeting. Remember, U.S. media was not allowed in, and Vice President Pence and Attorney General Sessions were asked to leave the room. He disclosed classified information to the Russians. Now, not that he isn't authorized to do that. He is, although that law changed in that regard. And I'll get to that follow-up in the next segment. But he disclosed classified information which was shared by the Israelis, by Mossad. And Trump just spilled it to the Russians. You could even say Trump leaked it. And the Israelis were not happy. Oh, no, they were not. And seriously, you blame Susan Wright posed this question last Friday at Red State. I mean, after the news broke that Trump chose to share intelligence with visiting Russian officials, pretty much all hell broke loose. Like it had been perfectly calm and quiet before. Probably the most egregious detail was that President Luce's location of the undercover operative that was providing the U.S. with intelligence on ISIS's move in Syria. This bit of idiocy put an Israeli spy embedded with ISIS at risk. And Israeli intelligence officials are pissed. This quote's from thehill.com. To them, it is horrifying, the U.S. defense official told Foreign Policy magazine. Their first question was, what is going on? What is this? We've been making those exclamations for a long, long time. The official said that Israeli intelligence officials were shouting at their American counterparts in meetings just days before Trump arrives in Tel Aviv, which is the trip he took this past week. The report follows another article earlier last week that said Israeli intelligence officers were boiling mad and demanding answers over Trump's disclosure, which came during an Oval Office meeting with 2 Russian diplomats the previous week. Now, you have to wonder how Trump will be received in Israel on his first foreign trip after going back on his word to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, something we would have been discussing in the past few videos, if not for all this other stuff, suggesting that Israel stop building settlements on their own territory. But now comes this. The official cited by Foreign Policy magazine said the details shared by the president may have come from a source that was knowledgeable about Iran's Revolutionary Guards and its ties to Hezbollah, an adversary to Israel in Syria and Lebanon. The official said there is a fear in Israel that Trump's slip could damage the country's intelligence and put lives at risk. Boy, that tackling detail to keep Trump's mouth shut is looking better all the time, isn't it? Trump on Twitter, and then here's that follow-up. Trump on Twitter defended his interactions with the Russians, saying he shared facts amid the mutual fight against ISIS, even though the Russians have not been fighting ISIS. They've been fighting the Syrian rebels in order to keep the Bashar al-Assad in place and in power. They're aiding the Iranians in this. They're not fighting ISIS. That's also, it was also in a follow-up tweet where Trump defended, I had every right to share intelligence with the Russians. Well, that's true. He did have every legal authority to do that, which just goes to show that that law should probably be changed, don't you think? So here you have Donald Trump leaking classified information to the Russians before the deep state can do it. Well, I seem to recall it wasn't that long ago that Trumpers were screaming bloody murder when Hillary Clinton sold 20% of U.S. uranium to a Russian company. Or howling in outrage when Barack Obama whispered sotto voice to Dmitry Medvedev in the summer of 2012, well, after this election, I'll have a lot more flexibility. And yet now, Trumpers love Putin. They love the Russians. We should be allied with the Russians. I've seen this, folks. I have seen this firsthand. Trumpers really believe this crap. See, they're sharing facts, and they're sharing facts and intelligence with our enemies. Trump seems to have a problem distinguishing between our allies, like Israel, and those who have already proven they are absolutely opposed to us, like the Russians. And can you not see, I mean, even if, as is probably the case, there was no collusion between Trump and the Russians regarding the 2016 election, you can see what now, I trust, why Trump, or why the Russians wanted Trump to win. It really is obvious. But it goes beyond even the vengeful tweets, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a headline at the Hill, May 19th. White House could use ethics rule to hamper special prosecutor on Russia investigation. You know, it's like, and I'm really starting to believe this, because it's almost like Trump wants to get impeached, because he just can't envision resigning and still being able to save face. So he's got to make his enemies bring him down so that he can play the martyr and he can counterpunch and he can just create as much chaos as possible. You know, kind of like the Samson X. If I'm going down, all you bastards are going down with me. Psychologically, that's the only thing about this that any sense whatsoever. If not that, then it's just insane, absolutely insane. This story, Max Greenwood. If I can get the page to move, okay, there it is. The White House is looking into a federal ethics rule barring recently hired government employees from investigating their law firm's clients for 2 years after leaving the practice, Reuters reported last Friday. If the White House invokes the rule, it could hamper the special counsel investigation into alleged collusion between Trump's campaign and Russia. Oh boy. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appointed former FBI Director Robert Mueller to serve as special counsel for the probe on last Wednesday. But Mueller's former law firm, Wilmer Hale, also represents Trump's son-in-law, Kurt Kushner, and former campaign manager Paul Manafort. That fact could significantly stymie Mueller's ability to conduct an investigation of Trump and his associates, according to Reuters. So either Trump is trying to obstruct justice by this means, or Rod Rosenstein deliberately appointed somebody who could be set up for this perceived attempt at obstruction of justice, which you can count on the Democrats screeching at the top of their lungs. So, I mean, the only thing you can conclude is that Trump wants to be impeached. He's not happy unless he's in a fight. That's it. He's not happy unless either everyone is bowing down to him, or he's fighting, counter-punching, and all that nonsense. He wants to be impeached. What other conclusion can there be? The Justice Department, however, can waive the wait period for Mueller. It is a wait period that Trump extended from 1 to 2 years with an executive order signed in January. Trump called Mueller's appointment as special counsel a witch hunt that hurts our country terribly. No, what he means is it hurts me terribly, referring to Trump. He has repeatedly denied any collusion between his campaign and Russia. Russia is accused of attempting to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. On Tuesday, a report uncovered evidence that Trump asked Comey in February to end the FBI's probe of former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who resigned in February amid revelations that he misled senior White House officials about the nature of his conversations with Russia's ambassador. The Washington Post reported last Friday, that the FBI has identified a White House official close to Trump as a person of interest in its Russia investigation, and that the probe is expected to accelerate in the coming weeks. Of course, person of interest doesn't mean a suspect. Just what the words say, person of interest. Maybe the evidence seems to be leading in this direction. Now we're going to investigate this. By the way, that White House official close to Trump, who's a person of interest in the FBI's Russia investigation, is Jared Kushner. And we'll eventually get to just exactly why he's considered a person of interest. Let's just say Kushner has at least as many Russia connections as Michael Flynn. And Kushner is Trump's son-in-law. So this goes beyond, just using extraordinarily gobsmackingly awful judgment in making in making hiring decisions. This is his own family, which makes it much harder to believe that if Kushner, it makes it much harder to believe that Trump has no connections with the Russians, because if you are going to have a conduit to Trump, if you're the Kremlin, wouldn't Trump's son-in-law just fit the bill to the moon? Wouldn't that be perfect? Your conduit to Trump as his son-in-law? Doesn't that make perfect sense? So Kushner being involved in this makes it a lot more difficult to argue that it didn't have anything to do with Trump. I'll tell you that much right now. Trying to kneecap the special prosecutor that's just been appointed? Trump wants to be impeached. There's no other explanation. And finally, I don't know if you can really call this an epilogue, because the whole Russiagate saga is just begun. So, epilogue is, I guess, the best term I can come up with to describe it. Kind of sums everything up in this 5-video/podcast series. Courtesy of Jay Caruso at redstate.com. Like with Hillary Clinton, Jim Comey is not to blame for Donald Trump's problems. See, James Comey did his job for nearly 3 years, so far under the radar, the likelihood most people knew his name before his July 5th, 2016 statement about Hillary Clinton and her email scandal is small. Comey's decision to recommend not charging Hillary Clinton with a crime infuriated conservatives. Hillary Clinton supporters didn't like Comey publicly rebuking her. See, this is the impossible situation that James Comey faced. Then came the infamous Comey letter at the end of October of last year, just 10 days before the election. The very letter Hillary Clinton says was responsible for her loss to Donald Trump. The accusation is hogwash, but I suppose it makes Mrs. Clinton and her supporters feel better. Now, ironically, Comey is now a convenient scapegoat for Donald Trump and his supporters/defenders. Donald Trump didn't have an issue with James Comey until the latter confirmed in March that there was indeed an investigation into Russia's meddling in the 2016 election and whether or not any members of Donald Trump's campaign colluded with Russian officials, and to determine if any crimes were committed. 2 months later, Trump fired Comey. Trump's initial reason for terminating Comey turned out to be BS, and the public learned in his interview with Lester Holt the reason Trump fired Comey was because he thought it would speed up the Russia investigation. He was wrong. Ironically, Trump supporters are calling the FBI investigation, what else, a conspiracy, and claiming anybody not showing direct fealty to and bowing down to Donald Trump is behaving hysterically for wanting the investigation to play out in an orderly manner, which can only be good for Trump, assuming his innocence, right? There is chaos in all of this, but the blame lies nowhere else than on Donald Trump. Not James Comey, and not anybody else. To make the case Comey is attempting to bring down the Trump administration is to believe Comey is a devious mastermind who can, on the one hand, help Trump win the presidential election, only to, on the other hand, see him removed from office before finishing his first year. Bottom line is, Trump's troubles are of his own making, similar to Hillary Clinton's campaign problems. This just summarize where we've been on this woebegone journey. Trump made the decision to surround his campaign with people having ties to the Kremlin, including Paul Manafort, Carter Page, and, maybe even his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Trump made that decision. Trump did that. Trump complains all the time about leaks, but it was he who used leaked DNC emails from WikiLeaks whenever it suited him politically on the campaign trail last year. I mean, remember when he said at a campaign rally, "I love WikiLeaks"? Yeah, because it helped him. He doesn't hate leaks. He just hates leaks. He only hates leaks that go against him. If they go for him, he loves them. He's already said it publicly. Trump denied time and again Russia's attempts to interfere with the election, even after he won, and the intelligence community presented Trump with the evidence of Russia's efforts. Remember, Russia's attempt to subvert the 2016 election was about so much more than Trump. And we're not the first country to whom the Russians have done something like this. We're just the biggest. And again, can't you see why? Do you see why Russia, A, thought they could influence Trump, and B, preferred Trump? I mean, at least with the Clintons, they charge our enemies a generous fee for selling out. You don't even have to get Trump to sell out. All you have to do is just stroke his ego, because he's an idiot. Trump decided to wake up early on a Saturday morning in March 4th, and accuse Barack Obama without any evidence whatsoever of wiretapping his phones in Trump Tower, which made himself look like an idiot. Trump attempted to turn Comey into a member of the team instead of understanding the institutional independence of the FBI director. The FBI director, the chief law enforcement, chief criminal investigator, can't be a partisan, which gets back to how, to Donald Trump's extreme case of Obama envy. Because Obama totally partisanized and corrupted the Department of Justice and the FBI, and Trump wants it to work the same way for him. Simple as that. And Trump runs around saying the Russian connection to his campaign is made up or a hoax, despite the existence of an ongoing FBI investigation. So there can be plenty of evidence of Russian attempts to subvert our election last year without Trump necessarily getting caught up in it. It is possible, because remember, it's about so much more than Trump, but Trump thinks everything's about him. And that everything should be about him, except things that he doesn't like. Now, this is not to say that Comey's hands are entirely clean, God knows, but this idea that Comey is trying to take down Donald Trump is absurd. The notion that Comey lied under oath in his testimony before Congress as it relates to his memo accusing Trump of a wink-nod maneuver over the Michael Flynn investigation is being pushed by lunatics like Alex Jones, Bill Mitchell, and Paul Joseph Watson. And there's a lot of irony there. But the bottom line is, Trump's problems are all his own doing. They're all self-inflicted. Nobody did it to him. If anybody's out to get Trump, he's certainly making it easy for them. Hell, they don't have to lift a finger. He's doing all the work for them. Donald Trump is an idiot. And that is, and like I say, it's difficult not to reach the conclusion that Trump is trying to get himself impeached. Because by his conduct over the past, over the 2 weeks in question, and really in the bigger picture, going all the way back to his inauguration, if he was trying to get himself impeached, I can't see how he'd be acting any differently.